Okay. We are almost there. Monday is the last day of class. You have one more assignment to go that's due on Monday. We do have a couple more studios left as well. Just as a reminder, graduation is in July. I think it's on the 12th. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. It'll be here at the Mentor Center. So if you get your stuff finished up, or even if you don't get your stuff finished up, please come to graduation. It'll be great. I'll be there. I think that's really about it. I haven't been informed of any other information to dispense to you guys, so I think that's about it. Any questions about the end of class stuff or what's required of you or anything else before we start on today's material? Yeah. I posted a picture of the baby on Slack a couple weeks ago, or yeah, a week or two ago. If you want to see a picture of the baby, or I got plenty on my phone, so just flag me down. I'll be happy to show them to you. What other question? Was there a question over here? Yeah. Liftoff applications. I have not been informed of what the status is of those. I don't know if Ryan is here or if he can hear me, but if he is, I'll flag him down and see if I can get more information about that to you here momentarily. Yeah. Is there a way to set, so like just have a column that's with unique values in it? Is that? As unique? Sure. So one way to do that, although I don't think this is what you're asking, but one way to do that is to just declare a primary key column, because those are guaranteed to be unique, and we've been doing that. But there's, I mean, you can still in a database declare columns as unique. So I just don't know if, or I don't know off the top of my head. Here we go. This looks like unique equals true. So it looks like you can declare a column and then specify an attribute here. Let me zoom in on this so you can actually read it. Specify an attribute here to indicate that that column should have unique values in it. I would think that if you do something like this then and you submit something that's not unique, it's probably going to crash and tell you there's a problem. Which is, I mean, that's what you want, right? If you really care about that kind of thing, that's what you want. The other thing, of course, you can do is just declare it as an ID column, which makes it a primary key, which has to be unique in that particular case. Does that answer your... Yeah, that would be a great thing actually to add to the username attribute that we saw last time. In fact, we're going to expand on that example today as well. I coded up some extra stuff to show you with that example today. I think that's great. Great idea. What other questions did you have? Okay. There wasn't a ton of prep work today, but there was some. So I do want to talk to you about what prep work there was. But basically having to deal with many-to-many relationships. So I want to talk about this from two perspectives. I want to talk about what those many-to-many relationships look like in the database, and then I want to talk about what those many-to-many relationships look like on our side, on the code in Java. So in a database, what am I going to see? If I have a many-to-many relationship and I peel off the lid of the database and I peek inside, what am I going to see? What am I going to see in there? There's one particular structure in particular that I'm thinking of that's a clear indication of, oh, hey, many-to-many relationships going on here right now. The linking table. Yeah, the linking table. What's a linking table? What am I going to see in that linking table? Foreign keys. It's all foreign keys. That's it. So the way we represent many-to-many relationships in a database is as two one-to-many relationships combined. And they meet up in the middle at a linking table where I have at least two foreign keys, one into one side of the many-to-many and one into the other side of the many-to-many relationship. What's the primary key of the linking table? Does it have one? It's a combination. Yeah, we call that a composite key. It's a combination of both foreign key columns is what the primary key of that linking table is. Does the table have to have a primary key though? Actually, no, it's not strictly required, although I would say pretty unusual. if you see a table that does not have a primary key in it. Pretty unusual to see, but not strictly required. Linking tables do have a primary key. It's a composite key based on 2 columns that contain the foreign keys. Are there any questions about that structure? It's a classic structure that you'll see all the time when working with many relationships. You'll get some practice with that in the studio either today or on Monday. All right, so then let's switch over to the Java side of things. What am I going to see on the Java side if I have a many-to-many relationship going on? How do I set that up in my code? This is the easy side, right? I just have an annotation that says many-to-many. That's it. What's the type of that often going to be? That annotation goes along with a field, right? What's the type of that field often going to be? Or almost always, I guess. It's gonna, I'm sorry? The map field, right? So we do have to specify the mapping, right? We do have to specify, I'm sorry, which column is matched up with this particular relationship. But if I look at the Java side and I have a many-to-many relationship, or even on a one-to-many relationship, we see this as well, right? The data type is going to be a collection of something, a list, right? It has to be some sort of an aggregation, some sort of a list of things to represent the fact that there are many things involved on both sides of the equation. Otherwise, I mean, I think that's really about it. It's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of complicated stuff to worry about setting up on the Java side. We're going to access these relationships through the data access objects, just like we would for any other data access. I know that in the prep work videos, they went through a lot of stuff involving here's how to use many-to-many relationships after they've been set up. But really, it's just more a review of using those data access objects to grab data out of the database, pull things out of the database when you need to. So I didn't feel the need to rehash that stuff too much, partially because I've got a code example that's going to do that for us today. So are there any questions about many-to-many relationships before I switch over to this code example that I whipped up for you all today? Let me preface this code example by saying that if you're working on the last assignment or something like that, or even the studios, please don't feel like it's 100% necessary to incorporate this code into your assignment. I feel like that might actually make things more complicated, make things more difficult for you. So if you're working on the last assignment, if that's something that's currently on your plate, please maybe just take the day off, sit back, relax, and watch the show. Don't feel like you need to put this code in there because it's going to make your life harder, not easier. But I do think it's an interesting example, and if you're done with the assignment, then this might actually be something that's good for you to try and tack onto it. Add a little bit more functionality to your Cheese website. So I'm going to walk you through this. One of the things that I've done, well, actually, let me show you the front end first, and then we'll go back and take a look at how this all works. You can see, I mentioned this last time. I didn't get around to it last time, but I did mention this last time. I have a login page now, so I can actually log in. But not only that, if I try to go to a page like, am I logged in right now? I don't actually know. I hope not. If I try to go to a page, like if I want to view a cheese list and I'm not logged in, it just takes me back to the login page, right? So this is something that we saw before in Python with Flask. What did we use to accomplish stuff like this? We used sessions or cookies, right? Either one will get you there. I actually chose to use cookies in this particular case to keep track of who's logged in or not. So we now have the ability to log users in, and what that means is that if I log in, and I know it says sign up, but I forgot to change that. But now this list is strictly my list, right? It's not a shared list across all users. It is mine. It is my list. And if I make changes to it, like if I add things to the cheese, I don't know, to the list, then that's actually probably not right, but whatever. Then only my list is updated. Everybody else's list is unaffected by that. So what do I need on the database to reflect that fact? That this is my list and not anybody else's list, and that everybody else has their own list. What do I need in the database side to reflect that? A one-to-many relationship. One user owns many different kinds of cheeses. And then in the studio, you'll see that they're going to have you do a many-to-many relationship with the menus, and they're also going to have you do a one-to-many relationship today with categories, I believe, as well. So lots of potential relationships exist. Yes? Why is it not many-to-many? One cheese has many. So it could actually be a many-to-many relationship. That is absolutely possible. So like, it's a little unclear, I think, from the website what this refers to. Are we talking about a certain brand of cheese necessarily, or is it just a generic cheese that I have in my refrigerator, right? If you think of this as like a list of things that is in my pantry, then I don't know, one-to-many might seem a little bit more appropriate. If you think of it as like a list of cheeses at the grocery store or something like that, then a many-to-many relationship might seem more appropriate. I agree with you, though, that there's certainly an argument to be made for a many-to-many relationship there. I 100% entirely agree with you. In fact, if we wanted to, we could potentially refactor this to work with the many-to-many relationship once we're done with this example. That would be something that we could talk about. As of right now, though, it's set up as a one-to-many. One user has many different cheeses on their list, and that insulates the list from all the other users. And so, and everything works, right? If I go to remove, I just see my list of stuff. I don't see anybody else's list of stuff. So it is very much tailored towards specific users. All right. Let me show you then on the back end how all this stuff works. Some of this you've seen before. Some of this you know how it works already. We've seen one-to-many relationships. We've seen how to set that stuff up. That's not new. That's review. But other things like how do we track users? How do we log people in, log people out? That wasn't in the prep work, but I thought it was something important, especially as you work on your projects, especially as you move on to put together your projects. I felt like that was something that would be important for you to have in your toolkit, so I wanted to cover that today. So let's take a look at the relationship side of things first, since that's hopefully review for us. If I go to the user class, as promised, you see a one-to-many annotation on this list of cheeses with a name here for the column that's supposed to be linking those cheeses up with the users that they're associated with. And then on the cheese side, you see the opposite end of that, the many-to-one relationship. Here's the user that owns this particular cheese, right? Here's the user. Now, if I wanted to switch this up, as somebody mentioned, if I wanted to make this a many-to-many relationship instead, would that be terribly difficult for me to do? I could switch this actually, oops, didn't mean to do that. I could switch this actually to be a many-to-many. What effect does that have on this variable here? What effect does that have? It needs to be a list of users, right? A list of users. And then on the user side, I think it would just be many-to-many. And then what was the name of that? How do we set the column? I don't think it was join column anymore. It was it mapping? Equals something like this. Oops. So if you wanted to switch this to a many-to-many, I'm actually going to undo this in a second because I want to stick with my original example. But if you wanted to switch this to a many-to-many, that's all it would really take to do it. It's not a difficult switch back and forth between those two different types of relationships. Where it does have an effect, though, is in the controller. The controller is where you'd see the biggest effect. In fact, if I go show you the cheese controller, which I've got around here somewhere. If I go and show you this cheese controller, when I go to my index page where I just see the list of cheeses, you can see now that instead of accessing all of the cheeses, I'm actually looking up the user who's currently logged in. I haven't talked to you about how I manage the login and all that stuff yet. That's coming up next. But I use my data access object, and this find by username method, that's the method we added to our data access object on Monday to allow us to look up values by their username. So I look up the user by the username, who's currently logged in, and then I pass in just the cheeses that belong to that particular user instead of all of the cheeses that exist in the entire database. Does that make sense to everybody? That's how we isolate users from one another. As soon as I look up this user from the database, that list of cheeses inside of the user model, inside of the user object, is populated with all of the cheeses that are associated with that user from the database. It follows those links and sets it up for you automatically, pulls them all in. And so then all I need to do is I added a little getter to the user model down here at the bottom that just returns the list of cheeses, and then I'm using that in place of the call to the cheese data access object, which is what was there originally. Does that make sense, everybody? Are there any questions about that? Yeah, great question. If you remember from, and this actually is something that might be solved by what we were talking about earlier. If you remember from Monday when we wrote this find by username method, the return type is a list of users because we have not marked this column as unique. And the database does not necessarily think that this is going to be a unique value. The database still thinks that this might return lots of values. And so I get a list back, and I know that there's only one thing in that list, right? So I just grab the first value out of it. That actually could be improved. I think if we added the unique attribute to that, it could help us solve that problem. Make it a little bit cleaner. It's not broken the way it is. It's just a little bit messy. Great question. All right, let me think. Let's talk about how to do these cookies then, and the user login, logout stuff. So if I go to my user controller, I have a login page now. Which is, so this is just the one that displays the login form. There's not a whole lot special going on there. The magic is in processing that form. User types in the username, they type in their password. I need to make sure that that user is in the database. I know who that person is. And then I also need to make sure that the password matches the password that they typed in the box. That's what I'm responsible for. Now, I did not put hashing into this. I did not do salts. That's something else that we want to do to make this secure, but I did not quite make it that far. So we'll just be checking the passwords in plain text, but still. So I type in username and a password into the login box, and then it's going to use that same method we were just looking at to see if it can find anybody in the database that has that username. Do I know who this person is? Do I know what this user is that's trying to log in? If it's empty, I'm going to put in a message that says, hey, I don't know who you are. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea who you are, and send them back and tell them to try again. If I do know who they are, then I'm going to grab the password out of that logged in user, and I'm going to check to make sure that it equals the password. This is the user object from the form. This is the password they typed into the box. So this stuff here is what they typed into the box. This is the password that's been saved in the database. I'm going to check them. If they're the same, then I'm going to make a cookie. I'm using cookies here. You actually can do session stuff with Spring as well. I just chose to use cookies. I don't really know why. That was just the first thing I thought of to do, was to use cookies. And so I'm going to set a cookie. I'm going to make a new cookie. Cookies are just key value pairs, right? Just key value pairs. So the key here is called user, and then the username, who's logged in, right? That's going to be the value. So I just set a cookie. What's the username of the person that's currently logged into this website? And then in order to make sure that cookie gets saved on the client machine, I have to use something called a response. I don't think we've actually seen this before. I added another parameter over here, HTTP servlet response. This is an object that represents the response that's going back from the server to the client. So a response, we've seen these before. Responses have codes associated with them, like 404 or 500, right? That's the response. That's where that number comes from, is the response. I can also put cookies into that response and send them back to the client, and then the client will store those cookies. And then later on in my application, I'll ask the client, hey, do you have this cookie? Can you tell me what's in this cookie? And they will give me the value in that cookie, and I can check it to make sure that they're logged in. So I need this response object in order to set cookies. So I create the cookie here. I set the path to be /, which means it's going to work for the entire website, the whole website, and then I add the cookie to the response. And then I just send them over to their list. I send them to the main page after they've been logged in. So that's the side that sets the cookies that actually logs a user in. If the password doesn't match, you see another message down here that just says you typed in a bad password and sends them back to log in again. Any questions about this before we look at the other side, which is how do we actually use those cookies? Any questions about setting cookies, setting responses? Yes?
Where are you importing the cookie class and the servlet?
So those are, I believe, here we go. There's the cookie class, here's the servlet. Actually, we haven't seen the request yet. We just used responses from the server to the client. Later on, when we get to logging out, I'll show you that we're going to use request as well. Any other questions? Any other questions? So then the other side of the equation is if I visit a page, I want to check to see who's logged in and make sure that I display the appropriate information for that user, right? And in order to know who's logged in, I have to examine that cookie that I set. I have to find that cookie that was set, see who's logged in, and then retrieve the appropriate information. So over in my cheese controller now, I've changed things a bit. You'll notice actually that I've added the user data access object over here. We're going to need this now because I'm going to be looking up users and making sure to display user information. Not information for everybody, but for the specific user who's logged in. To check the cookie, we can look at the index. You can see that inside of this index definition, I have a new annotation called cookie value. This tells Spring that the value of this input parameter is coming from a cookie. So you should go look up the cookie with this key called user. And whatever value you find for that is what I want to be used for this parameter over here. I've also set a default value. If you don't find a cookie, right, you look up the username and it's just not there, you can't find it, then just use a default value of none. Just say nobody is logged in. That allows me to do stuff like this, where I check the username to see if it's equal to none. If it is, I know that nobody's logged in, and I send them to the login page. I send them back to the login page. If they are logged in, then I'm going to look up their user. We already saw this part a few moments ago. I'm going to look up that user by their username, and then use that user object to display the appropriate cheeses. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope. And so I've added that cookie value to basically every method, especially to do these checks here to make sure somebody's logged in before hitting that page. Actually, in practice, I might, instead of copying this if statement all over the place, I might want to make a method instead that does this for me. Just makes code a little bit cleaner, so I don't have that same thing pasted over and over and over again. But I do that for basically every single method.
And that's just the piece that's redirecting the user back to the main page if they're not logged in.
If they're not logged in, it redirects them to the login page, yes. This piece right here. Yep. If they are logged in, they'll skip this and then they'll just do whatever the method was originally doing. I did have to make some small changes, to indicate that we were using the user objects, but otherwise it's more or less the same as it has been. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes?
Python Flask, we had, I forget the name of it, but essentially did this sort of validation before and pre.
Yeah.
Do we have something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see. I wouldn't be surprised if we did. In Python Flask, we had a method that we could run before every single handler. to see if the user was logged in or not. The question was, does Spring have something that does the same thing? And handler interceptor, can I call a method before each request? Yes, this is exactly the question that we had. I'm not sure, wait. Define a method to be called prior to each of the controller methods. Interceptor is the solution. That's what they're saying. They're saying this handler interceptor, and that's what else was showing up on this page. So here's a method called pre-handle, and it looks like you could stick your cookie inside of here to check to see, or actually, yeah, to check and see who the user is and check it this way. And then here's another method called post handle that you could run after a request if you wanted to as well. I'm not sure what, that probably wouldn't help us in this particular situation, but in other situations that might come in handy. But it looks like this is what you would want to do. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions? Any other questions? I do have one or two more things to show you. We also have logging out, so if I want to log a user out, right, I need to get rid of that cookie somehow. The way to get rid of cookies, does anybody remember how we get rid of cookies? Does anybody know how we get rid of cookies? If I have a cookie on my computer, I don't want it there anymore. I mean, if it's my computer, I can just go in and delete it, right? But how do I do that from an applications perspective? How do I do that with code? Anybody know? There's other properties of cookies. So cookies have key value pairs, but that's not all they have. What other values are cookies storing for us? Time limitations. That's how we can actually delete cookies. I can set the time limitation to be 0, which means it's just going to instantly expire, right? That's the other thing. That's how we delete cookies. We just set the time limit to be 0 so that it expires right away. And that's what I've done with my logout. If I go to my user controller and look at the logout handler that's down here at the bottom, here I have an HTTP servlet request. So before I was using a response. Response is from the server back to the client. Request is from the client to the server. It says, I want this specific web page. Please give me this web page. Here are the cookies that I have as well. And that's actually why I care about it, because they're going to send the cookies along here. So I grab the cookies from the request. These are all of the cookies that the user has on their machine. That should include the cookie that includes their username, right? Should include that as well. I go through the cookies. I set the max age to be 0. I set the time to be 0. And then I add that cookie to the response. I put it back in the response. Since that cookie already exists on their machine, it's just going to update that time. That time's now going to be 0, and it will delete the cookie in effect. And that should log the user out. And it does work if I go back to my page, or did I already do it? Oh, I guess I already did it. I clicked log out. Oh, whoops, no message available. Well, that's a problem. I screwed that up. How did I do that? Because I was already logged out, but what should happen though? There shouldn't be any cookies. So shouldn't it just return user login? That's what I would expect to happen. I'm not sure why not having any cookies would be a problem. I'm not sure.
Because you're doing the for cookie and cookie kind of thing, and it's not finding any cookies, so it doesn't run.
Yeah, it really does not like to log out when I've got when I'm not logged in. Why is? What's wrong?
Yeah. If cookies, maybe.
I guess this, I mean, is this returning null or something then? If this, I would expect this to return an empty array, but maybe it's not.
Well,
I would expect it to return an empty array, but if it's not, then if we can do this, this is not difficult. It just feels a little unnecessary to me, but maybe it is. Fortunately, I have to run it all over again to see if that actually fixes it, but that's probably it. You guys are probably right. I don't know what else it could be. Yeah, and that's the problem I was actually having on Monday, where it doesn't recognize the, for some reason, this project is not recognizing certain library code. I have that problem over here with the persistence stuff. I don't know why that is. I'm using quite literally the same code that was used in the demo videos from the same repository, but I figured that's probably what it came from. I wonder if doing like, but it should run build anyway after it. Anyhow, let's see if that fixed my login issue, my logout issue. No, it still didn't fix it. Still did not fix it. I'm not sure why.
Like 0 means there's actually 1, or that
Means
means 0?
0, yeah.
So you want less than 1.
I put length greater than 0, didn't I? Where am I at? User controller. Length greater than 0. I didn't think that would be it, but it's not helping me out here either. There's no error messages down here. I have a logout. I'm sorry? Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay. Well, let me just stop them both and start over again. All right. Still working? Yeah, still working. There it goes. So here's my login page. Yeah, it's still busted. Still busted. Weird. No message available. There was an unexpected error. Does it give me any? Oh, it does give me some errors down here now. So
that cookie and cookie statement.
Got a null pointer. I think this might be returning null. I think that's what's happening. I think this is the proper fix. It's not a length issue. It's cookies not equal null. That's the issue. I'm almost positive. Let's try it again. Any other questions while we're waiting on this to heat up? No? I think this is going to do it. All right. There we go. Yeah, I forgot to set the title, but oh well. That's an easy fix. It's an easy thing to fix. Cool. So I'll happily share this with you, but again, just to be clear, right, this is not part of the final assignment. In fact, this is going to make the final assignment harder if you go this route, which is a great thing if you're looking for stuff to do, if you're already finished and you're looking for more stuff to play around with. Give this a try. I actually think it would be a great exercise for you, very useful for your projects, I hope, but not strictly required for the assignment, so don't lose sleep over it if you don't get around to it. What questions did you all have for me? Any questions? Any questions about the assignment or anything else?
Just got a kind of a general question. When we're is there a reason that we would want to set a variable versus using like GDAO, DAO, or DAO that find one? So, Like, would it be better to set a variable for an object and then add that variable to model that add attribute, or just do the lookup to modify that?
Oh, so you mean, well, let me make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So in like cheese controller,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I was kind of there. Well, actually, I'd already changed a lot of these because of the refactoring I had to do. But you see here, I'm referencing a variable.
Right.
And I could I have just dumped this entire line of code inside of there? Yes, absolutely, I could have. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
in work environments, I mean, is one way better than the other?
Functionally, no, but code readability matters. And so while I certainly could have taken this whole line of code and dumped it in here as one big long expression, the reason that I did not is because it would have been a very long expression. And that there's not really a hard and fast rule about what's too long, right? That's sort of something that you just sort of kind of get a feel for. Honestly, what drives it for me a lot of the time, and I know this is true for other people as well, I hate having stuff that goes off the edge of my monitor. So if it's too long to fit on a single wide space of my monitor, I'm going to break it up into chunks because it just makes it easier for me to see. That's problematic because not everybody's got the same size monitor that you do, and you know, there's all kinds of other stuff. But it's at least pretty good, right? It'll at least keep you from making these Frankenstein long lines of code. And so I think at the very least you should be aiming for something along those lines. It's also a little different for me because I have my text blown up huge since I'm showing it on a screen. But great question. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right, you do have a studio. Part 2 of the studio is for today, and then part 3 will finish up on Monday. You also have that assignment, the Cheese MVC persistent assignment, to be working on as well. So keep trucking away on those things, and let us know if you need any help, have any questions. Thanks.